Well, hi, a very warm welcome to Dusty Shelf. Hope I find you well. And I've just actually finished filming a introduction to a video sitting right here. And I said at the beginning of that video, this has been such a long time since I sat here talking to the camera with the models and the radio control cars behind me. So about time I did a few of these. So this one, again, talking to the camera and adding bits in. So, yes, indeed, I bought part of the Flying Scotsman, and it is here. And when I say I bought, my wife actually bought this without me knowing. So it's part of the fire grate. Not too exciting. I do apologise for maybe a little bit misleading in the thumbnail, but do bear with me because I want to tell you about the day at the Nene Valley Railway and show some of the footage of the day. It was quite an amazing day out, and then talk about this, where it came from, why it's special to me, and then at the end I'm going to ask if anybody's got any ideas on, apart from throwing it away, if anybody's got any ideas of what I can constructively make this into. It is a genuine part of the Flying Scotsman, but it is a part that does get replaced on a regular basis, part of the fire grate, but we'll come to that in a moment. So a couple of weekends ago, as a birthday gift, my family took me to see the Flying Scotsman. It was a 2-day trip on the Nene Valley Railway. The first day was a tour around the footplate, around the workshops. The second day we went for a trip on the Flying Scotsman along the line. On the Friday, my wife and I, we drove up to the Nene Valley. It's near Peterborough, so about an hour and a half from here. Not too bad a drive, and parked up in the car park. And first thing that became apparent to us is on the Saturday, there wasn't a lot of parking there, and I expected it to be busy on the Saturday, so that was the first thing we learned. Although on the Friday there was not many cars there, we parked up, we went inside, we had a look round the station itself and the buildings. Flying Scotsman was there on the platform, well, not literally on the platform, next to the platform on the track, and looking absolutely splendid in the beautiful sunshine. And we decided, rather than queue to go on the footplate at that point, we'd go and have a look round to the workshops, which a little bit out of sequence for what the day had been planned for us, but we always like to be awkward, so we went down to have a look round the workshops, and that gave us our first real look at the Flying Scotsman from a side perspective, without the with actually down at sort of track level, rather than looking at it from the platform, and it's glistening in the sunshine. Such a beautiful engine. I mean, just to be that close to it. I've seen it many times before, and certainly been on the footplate before. Went on the footplate at the National Railway Museum last year, but certainly not seeing it from that perspective before, being down on track level, seeing it on the track, seeing it actually in the station environment, rather than in a museum. Totally different, and to be able to walk round to the front of it, get some really good photos, was absolutely splendid. And then we had a tour around the workshops. Outside was their Finnish loco from Finland, and had some really interesting valve gear on there, and I'll put a caption in the bottom what the loco was and the valve gear, because my memory's awful, as you know. I'm trying to do this in one take, just talking to the camera. I'm not going to remember the names of the locos, but there was first of all that Finnish loco outside. We had a look at some of the others that were in the workshop. Down towards the back there was one of their smaller engines in pieces, which was quite interesting. But we walked down past this wonderful coach that was sort of a timber framed coach, but very, very similar to something that I'd built in O-gauge some years back, so that drew my attention. Then it turned out this had actually been used in one of the James Bond films, which not that I'm a film buff, but it had screen time, so that was also quite intriguing. A bit further in, a couple of diesels to have a look at. There was a saddle tank as well, and then round into the coaling yard. We had a look through the coaling yard. Then round the corner, the first thing that really intrigued me was a vertical boiler steam tram. Now, I'm absolutely fascinated by these steam trams. I've been reading up on the ones that ran in Wisbech, but obviously were used also in the LNER. And this one, you could see the cylinders all attached to it. Obviously, the body was all taken off. It's in, current restoration or waiting restoration, but the boiler was still in situ. Pistons were at the bottom. You could see the shape of the tram, and you could certainly see underneath. and yeah, fascinating. First time I've ever seen one of those. And opposite that was a Swedish loco, quite interesting to see with in its current state and waiting repair. Moved down a little bit further and saw, I think it was a Class 37. Again, I'll put a caption in the bottom because my memory's not serving me right, but a huge diesel. And I remember saying on the video, you know, it's only when you get up close to these things, as we were in the workshop, you realise how big they really are. And it was fantastic to be that close, but from a sort of video point of view, I couldn't get far enough away to get all of these huge engines in frame, which was you know, a little bit frustrating, but equally it was lovely to walk through in the workshop environment and see them so close up. On to the right, opposite the I'm going to say Class 37, as I say, I'll put a caption in if that's wrong, was the steam crane. And interesting to see all the bits of the steam crane, again with a vertical boiler. The crane is actually used by the railway now and again for, you know, jobs around the yard. I mean, it's you know, it's a functioning steam crane and does get used. And then further down there was another diesel. Again, I'll put a caption in because I can't remember what it was. As we came out that first workshop, opposite the Flying Scotsman was the Sentinel. One of two Sentinels at the railway, sitting out in the yard, and just beyond that was the Pacer that we would see moving on the Saturday. The railway uses the Pacer as sort of its day-to-day travel, shall we say. When it's not running steam on the line, the Pacer does the majority of the movement, so I understand. But yeah, seeing the Sentinel there really caught my eye, mainly because I just bought a couple of these from Hornby, and reviewing the Hornby model of the Sentinel, I already knew a little bit about them, and obviously I've got another review coming up shortly, so it was interesting to see this out in the yard again in the sunshine, and we would see that start up on the Saturday as well. Moving round into the other workshop, a couple of engines that caught my eye. So the first thing was the traction engine, but traction engine on rails, so basically with flanged wheels, traction engine boiler, but mounted onto, you know, steam tracks, which was good fun, and actually having its hydraulic test while we were there. So when we came back the following day, the wheels had been put back on that, so obviously it must have passed its hydraulic test, but all the bits of that were all around the workshop. And parked just in front of that was a carriage, which I believe was from Sweden. Just had the roof all redone. It was fascinating to see all the, you know, the workmanship that had gone into putting the roof back on this carriage. And just in front of that was the Lions standard loco, currently having its boiler looked at, so just the frame sitting there. But again, fascinating to walk around it and get so close to it without the boiler on there. And then just to the far side, all of the machines in the workshop, and hydraulic jacks, and, you know, various other artifacts that, you know, for me, I love workshops, love walking around workshops, and to see all of the machinery there and be able to walk around it was, yeah, really great. We left there and we walked back down towards the main station building, past some of the carriages that the railway has, and beautiful LMS carriages that were sitting there in the sunshine. I think they're actually used, they look like they're being used as accommodation for the, you know, sort of volunteers around the railway. I'm not totally sure of that, but I'm sure somebody will correct me. Just in front of the station it's parked this little 040 loco or 060 loco, I forget whether it's got 4 wheels or 6 wheels. I think it was an 060 actually, but painted up as Thomas, and a little plaque on the back that basically this was named by Reverend Audrey, so this is said to be, let's call it the Thomas. And the railway does have a Thomas face on the front, although at the moment they're allowed to call it Thomas because the loco's named Thomas, but because of all the royalty rights now, which is, you know, I think such a shame, don't even get me going on that, you know, they're not allowed to call it Thomas the Tank Engine because of you know, copyright and all the other. Anyway, and parked next to that a little green saddle tank, which very similar to Percy, so great for the kids to see both Thomas and Percy technically sitting next to each other. And right next to that was the railway's largest sort of garden railway. Wasn't running on the Friday, but again it did run on the Saturday, and I just put a little bit of footage in now And yeah, nice to watch for a little bit. It was great to see, another little attraction on the railway. Anyway, we made our way back round onto the platform and walked back down to the Flying Scotsman and joined the queue for the footplate tour. Now, this is my only criticism of the whole weekend. It's a blessing and a criticism. So we queued for the best part of an hour to go onto the footplate, and I have to say, with me being one of the younger, dare I say, people there, and I'm, getting on a little bit, waiting for an hour. I mean, I struggled standing there for an hour, and I think, given the sort of demographic of the people that were there and looking around, really could have done with some chairs if we were waiting for an hour, could have done with somewhere to sit, or maybe, some ticketed slots or something. That's my only criticism. But then, as I say, it is a blessing because they were giving everybody a really good time on the footplate, about 20 minutes each, for a group of 5 or 6, onto the footplate, 20-minute, proper in-depth review of what's inside and a talk about the loco and the controls. Anyway, on to the Flying Scotsman. So we went into the interior of the Flying Scotsman. Now, the gentleman giving the talk is obviously part of the volunteer for the railway, and I didn't like to film him. I wasn't going to ask about filming. I thought the presentation was fantastic. There's also other people in the cab with us, and those who watch the channel, that I'm at pains not to film other people without asking permission, and there wasn't an opportunity to go round and ask everybody individually, do you mind if I film, so I just took some photos in there and a couple of bits of video sort of looking down the side of the loco away from the sort of general presentation that was going on in the cab. So apologies that I didn't get any footage of that, but I just, sometimes it's not appropriate to film, and that was one of those. Now, being on the footplate was something quite special. Now, as I say, I've been on the footplate before, but only in the National Railway Museum, and when they give footplate tours, it's either sort of up their steps and you peer in from the side, which isn't really on the footplate, or with the Flying Scotsman, what they've done recently is they've got like a sort of walkway, so they separate the loco and tender and they put a walkway between the two, so you're not technically standing on the footplate, you're sort of standing on a walkway in between the two, and it just gives you that sort of visual impression that you're there. This time round we were probably on the footplate. We climbed up the side of the loco, we climbed in through between the tender and the loco, and we were standing on the footplate, and beautiful inside, everything shiny. I mean, clearly it's a working loco. You can see the soot and the grime and the oil, where the thing has been in steam recently. But the guy giving the talk, fantastic talk about all the controls, and it was great to see the regulator and actually be able to put your hand on the regulator for the Flying Scotsman was something quite special. And yeah, everybody found it fascinating. Towards the end of the tour, looking into the tender, got a perfect view up inside the tender where the coal would be normally filled right up. Obviously that will be filled for the Saturday, but this was on the Friday. And then we were given the opportunity to walk through the corridor tender, which is something I've never done. And I must confess, when I was in the queue, I'm quite a big chap, and I said to my wife, I said, I'm a little bit worried I'm not going to get through, because it's supposed to be quite narrow. Well, needless to say, I'm worried about nothing. It's not, I'm not that big, and although it was very claustrophobic and you're sort of ducking as you walk through, it was quite easy to get through, to be fair. And at the far end there's some steps, you turn to the right, some steps down, and then you exit through the centre of the tender. So this was the philosophy, if you're not aware. I'm sure most of the people watching this channel are aware that the corridor tender was there to relieve the drivers so that they could take breaks on the non-stop, from London right the way up to Scotland, that they could have breaks for the firemen and replacement drivers, and they could walk through the tender and give themselves breaks on that long journey. So once we'd come out through the tender, we were exited into a coach, walked through the coach, and then came out through the side door. And the railway had done some nice little bits inside the, each of the compartments. They'd put one there with some lamps from the railway, and there was one done up as Harry Potter, and there's a little bit of memorabilia about the railway. So there's been a little bit of effort gone into, just making the exit from the Flying Scotsman something a little bit different, a little bit special. So that kind of concluded the day walking around the Flying Scotsman. And we called into a model shop on the way home, had a look in there, and had a spot of lunch, and really pleasant day out. And it was nice for me and my wife, just a nice relaxing day walking around the railway there. And very grateful that she did actually book that additional day, because it was really quiet. And although being really quiet, we still queued for an hour, but it was worthwhile. It was definitely worthwhile. And it was nice to be able to just park there, not have to worry about any parking machines. So hats off to the railway. Fantastic that you've got free parking. I mean, that's almost an unheard of in this day and age. And it was just really nice to have, walk around the gift shop that they've got there, walk around get a coffee in the cafeteria without crowds of people. So we move on to Saturday. Now, Friday night we'd driven back home, and having been there on the Friday, obviously scoping out the car park and realising there's not many of that parking spaces, I got everybody up really early on the Friday morning. So my wife, myself, it was my son and his girlfriend. Nobody was amused with me for waking them all up at 5 o'clock in the morning, getting everybody in the car and heading off, far too early for our 11 o'clock train. But once we got to the station, and the car park was already 3/4 full, everybody was sort of understanding, I think, that for my eagerness to get there. And basically by 8:30 the car park was completely full. They were parking out on the road, people were parking further down the road, and there was no parking anywhere. But getting there so early, saw the Flying Scotsman take its first movements of the day, and obviously those first few moments of motion got the drain cocks fully open, lots of steam across the yard, and what a sight. And then the noise as it traversed back across the points right in front of us, again stopping right down at the base of the yard, and then again full drain cocks open as it pulled back across the yard as it made its way up towards the carriages that had been pulling on the line during the day. Absolutely brilliant. Because we were there so early, we had a real opportunity to grab a coffee, and have another wander around the station. And at this point we watched as I mentioned, the Garden Railway. We watched that for a little bit, but they were running the pump truck or Gandy dancer up and down the yard, and my wife and my son's girlfriend decided that they'd have a go on it, so they made a donation to the charity that they were running, or to the railway, I think it was, to the railway. And they took the pump truck all the way up the yard and back down again. I wish I'd done it, actually. I didn't do it because I was worried about putting my back out, but they took that went up there. It looked like great fun, and I filmed a little bit of that, but I've only put a little clip in because obviously they don't like to be on cameras, but I basically showed a little bit of them coming back down the yard on the truck there, which was great fun to watch. It was highly amusing. And from that point on, we then made our way round onto the platform and watched the Pacer make its first journey of the day. Pacer was going to the next station up the line where there is a car park, and was basically bringing back a coach full of people for the train that we were waiting for at 11 o'clock. But also being there so early then gave us the opportunity to watch the Flying Scotsman leave for its first trip of the day, and watched it do its movements around the carriage. I've just put a little bit of footage in here as it pulls past and then reverses back towards the carriages waiting in the station. And then I left my family on the station as I walked down to the bridge to get some footage of it leaving the platform. And it looked absolutely splendid as it went across the bridge, across the river, and then headed off down the track. And it was this point that put the biggest smile on my face as it pulled away. Although it had the drain cocks open, it was it was quite a gentle pull away. I mean, this isn't a particularly fast line, but it's only when it got into the distance, just about to go out of sight, that they opened up the regulator, and really the note or the beat of the engine suddenly became apparent. But where I was standing, it was bouncing off the buildings behind me, bouncing off the station buildings. So I sort of had this echo, this noise and an echo and a noise and a beat and an echo and a beat and the beat and the echo and the beat and the echo, and it was just wonderful to stand there listening to it. One of those moments sort of lived with me. It was very, very special, and quite hard to describe on camera. But and certainly I'll put the footage in, but the footage doesn't capture where the noise was coming from, because it was in front of you, then behind you, then in front of you as it's bouncing off the structures. So. Yeah, quite wonderful. Anyway, we stood around for the next bit of time waiting for the Flying Scotsman to return. It was only gone for an hour and a half, and then obviously we caught it coming back into the station, which was wonderful. And it's this point where you realise how many people were actually there on the Saturday. There were people in the street, there were people watching from the sides of the line, and in the platform. It was... Well, I mean, it was almost like rush hour in London. I mean, there were so many people sort of moving it, first of all queuing around the actual engine itself, actually to get their photo taken with it, and then, the chaos on the platform. We made our way onto the carriage, and I was on there just in time to focus out the window and see the Scotsman do its run around, which was great as it went past the window. And then it was our turn to leave the station, and off we went down the line. I'll put a little bit of footage in here of it pulling away. And then we went on our way down the line. Now, if you want to watch the full video, I've put quite a bit of this footage into a separate video, and you can go and have a look at that. I'm not going to put too much in here because, as I say, there's a whole video on the channel. I will put the link in the description if you want to watch that. But as we went down the line, the thing that struck me is how many people were on the bridges and taking photos from the fields and next to the track. I mean, I didn't see anybody actually making any incursion into the track boundaries. They were all in the fields, or actually towards the far end of the line. A lot of footpaths that run parallel to the line, so people were just stopping in on taking a walk, and they were stopping, taking photographs. But it was just amazing to see how many people were fascinated by the loco, and I'm sure they get a similar affair when they're running normal steam down the line, people stopping and watching the steam engine. But with this being the Flying Scotsman, it was quite clear there was a lot of people out to view it, and yeah, it was very special. As we approach the far end of the line, there's a nature garden next to the line, and there's a strange looking loco sort of perched up on a raised track. And at the time I did think it was a maglev, but it's not. It's actually a hover train. So basically lifts off the track with air and is propelled along the track with air. So yeah, something very rare that I didn't know anything about, and I've come back and had a good read about that. But at the time I just assumed it was magnetic, but no, it is actually a hover train, and yeah, quite fascinating to see. And again, had the opportunity to watch the Flying Scotsman move around the train, and again filmed out of the window as it went past. And then on the way back, got some opportunities, sort of putting my camera out the window. I'd see people hanging out the windows on these trains, and it always worries me, not least because of the people there, but also if there's an accident, you know, it reflects badly on the whole heritage railway sort of industry. So my camera, very, very small. A lot of you have seen me walking around the train exhibitions with it, and I have the opportunity where I can literally just put up to my wrist outside the window just a tiny little bit of the camera, you know, and get a really good shot down the side of the train. And also, you know, my camera does talk to my phone, so I can actually be inside the carriage and I can see exactly what I'm filming. So all the footage I've got without me sort of hanging outside the window, as I have seen other people do. Having said that, on this particular line, I didn't see anything that was particular, apart from the bridges. There was nothing that was particularly close to the coach. And also there's you know, most of the line, or 90% of the line, is single track, so you're not going to get a passing train, but even so. So on the way back, rabbiting away thereabout, hanging out the window, basically there's some real opportunities, as there's a little curve in the line. Most of the line is straight, but there is a curve in the line. I've got some really good shots down the side of the train capturing the Scotsman in steam. Now, with the line as it is, it didn't really, you know, trouble the Flying Scotsman. I mean, it you know, barely went off idle, to be fair. It was quite a slow, gentle ride, but I was surprised how smooth the line was. Very, very well laid track. I've been on some heritage railways and you bounce around in the carriage, but this one very smooth all the way. And you know, a good bit of steam coming past, but didn't get that coal smell. So I'm not sure what coal was being used, but it didn't get that. You know, although I could smell the steam oil, and you could smell the steam if you like, but didn't get that very distinctive coal smell on this particular day. So I don't know what they were burning, but yeah, it wasn't like the sooty coal of old. This was something that you know, is obviously a lot cleaner and better for the environment, but yeah, it does take away a little bit of that nostalgia now and again. So we made our way back to Wansford Station, and when we arrived there, I took some more footage of the chaos on the platform, with all the people, you know, sort of, you know, transversing as they went, you know, trying to get off the train and back on again. And as I say, it's like rush hour. I've never seen a railway so busy, you know, a heritage railway, sorry, so busy. Great to see. It must, well, as I've read afterwards, I've read in Steam Railway magazine, absolute success for the railway, and it's clear the Flying Scotsman is still the star loco that it always has been. So a final bit of footage that I'll put in here is the Flying Scotsman leaving the platform. And then after that we walked down the platform. There's carriage to one side and model railway in there, and I filmed a video. It's on the channel if you want to see it, me sort of looking round the model railway. Very, very good model railway, and well worth a visit if you're in the area. And lovely to see it inside a carriage. I mean, yeah, absolutely wonderful. And it's this point that my wife then said, well, I bought you a present and it's in the car. So we went back, and basically in the little gift shop on the side of the platform, they've got like a porter cabin where they're selling various bits and pieces in there, and on the floor were these grates, and she bought one of these for me, and it came with a certificate, and I put a photo of the certificate in here. I don't want to handle it because I've been handling the crate. So it says here, this is to certify that this fire bar was removed from the firebox of 60103 or 4472 as I've always known it, Flying Scotsman, at the Nene Valley Railway. The fire bar formed part of the fire grate when the locomotive was steamed from York to Wansford on the 19th of February 2025, and then it's signed by Paul Rose, the locomotive department manager of the Nene Valley Railway, with both of the logos there of the Nene Valley Railway and Flying Scotsman. So this is part of the fire bar from inside the firebox of the Flying Scotsman. Now I've got here, this is a grate that actually fits inside my 5-inch Speedy. This is the spare grate that I've got for it, and essentially, you have two types of grate that the coal would sit on and burn. So what you'd do is the fireman shovels the coal in. I'm sure everybody watching this channel, but just in case somebody's not aware, the fireman would shovel the coal in. The coal would sit on the grate, and it's the fireman's job to try and get quite an even coverage of coal across the whole of the grate. And then as the fire burns, all the ash and soot and everything would fall through the fire grate into the fire pan underneath and be caught to be cleared out at the end of the day, meaning that all the unburnt fire didn't get all sort of coked up inside and dampen the burning of the coal. Now most of the bigger locos, and I don't know, I think the Flying Scotsman's got it, but would have something to sort of shake the grate every now and again, and you could shake the grate and that would obviously take all the little burnt bits of embers off of the burning coal and drop them through, so that you would get the most energy transfer, if you like, or heat off of the fire. Now, as I say, there's two types. This is the grate type, where you've got a complete grate, and over time, obviously with all of the heat and cooling up and heating up, cooling down, heating up, cooling down, burning the fire on there, the shaking, the movement of the loco, actually the grate would break down and eventually it would need replacing. And then the second type, which is the fire bar type, where you'd have fire bars forming sections of the grate, so a section could be replaced, rather than after a grate like this, after it broke down, you'd have to replace the whole grate, whereas fire bars, you could replace small sections of it. And this is what this is. So I don't know how long this has been inside the Flying Scotsman, but clearly was replaced once it got to the Nene Valley Railway, and these are the bits that were taken off, and the railway has sold these to raise funds for the railway. So at this point, let me say, I'm under no disillusion that these are consumables of a steam engine, and whilst I've said I've bought part of the Flying Scotsman, I'm not under any disillusion that this is something that has been replaced and will be replaced many times over in the life of the Flying Scotsman. However, I have a piece of metal that has been inside the firebox of the Flying Scotsman whilst it's been in steam, and that does mean a lot to me. I mean, it's something that not many people would have, and as a steam enthusiast, it's lovely to have the signs on the platforms, it's lovely to have the loco names that cost an arm and a leg, but something like this burnt piece of iron means the world to me. To know that it's been inside such a famous loco as the Flying Scotsman when it's been in steam, it's wonderful, and I'm so grateful to my wife for buying this. Well, had I seen this in the shop, would I have bought it? Truth is, probably not. Main reason being for the nagging that I would have got, or the earful I would have got for buying another bit of old iron to put on display. Thankfully, my wife went in there, she saw it on the floor, she thought Matt's going to love that, and bought it. Now, arguably she paid a lot of money for it, I'll tell you how much in a moment, but I'm going to caveat that by saying this is pretty unique. It's been inside, or been part of, probably one of the most famous locos in the world, and not many people can say they've got a bit of their Flying Scotsman sitting here in the garage. And as I said, I'm not under any illusion that these bits do get replaced quite relatively frequently, but relative to the rest of the loco. Thankfully she saw this, she thought, yeah, Matt's going to love that, what a wonderful thing for him to have, and a souvenir of the day. She actually paid £50 for it, and on face value, £50 for this bit of iron, it's quite a lot of money, but that money goes towards the railway, so you've got to keep that in mind. By selling these old bits of scrap, it does raise funds for the railway. So onto the piece itself. So let me just show you around this side. It is extremely heavy, so you can see the kind of shape of it. This end you've got like a collar that would sit inside the frame, and then obviously where all the let's call it damage at the top here, this is where the coals would be sitting, and you'd have the vast amounts of heat sitting on you know, part of, I'm going to use the grate as an example again, but if you imagine this cut into sections, this would be one of these bars that runs across. And yeah, so the question I've got is, what do I do with it? So first thing that jumped to mind is I will use this as a doorstop. And then I thought to myself, well, actually all I'm going to do is stub my toe on it, and as I say, it's extremely heavy and quite sharp, so I've given that idea a miss. The other thing I thought of doing is maybe cutting a piece from it. You know, I'm sure I can cut through it with something, and basically polishing it up and getting it engraved Flying Scotsman. You know, as a sort of paperweight, a souvenir, something along those lines. But then it loses its kind of uniqueness in the fact that you can see what this, or almost see what this is. And with the sort of provenance of the certificate, it is something that it is tangible, it's recognisable, you know, to somebody who would know about these things. So keeping it as is, I think, is the way that I want to go. The final thing is, the only thing I can come up with is probably to put it on display in the garden as a garden ornament, probably under the eaves of the shed so the weather doesn't get at it, and yeah, just leave it as a talking piece. But if any of you have got any ideas of what I could do with this, you know, what I could do to make it interesting, or more interesting, you know, I don't want comments about throw it away, because it means a lot to me. It means, you know, it's a special memento of my day on the railway. But if there's any realistic ideas of what to do with this, then yeah, please put them in the comments. I'll be really interested. I think it's a wonderful thing, and yeah, I feel very lucky and very privileged to have this, you know, and mostly so that my wife saw this and thought Matt would like that, you know, and it's not something that I've just you know, another bit of iron that I've picked up. I've got several bits of iron all on display all over the place. You may have seen the video that I did about the wheel off of Megaphobia, the roller coaster at Oakwood. You know, I've got several different roller coaster wheels that I have on display, and yeah, bits of track pins and all kinds of things off the roller coasters, and a couple of bits off of steam engines. I put a couple of photos in now, and yeah, this is another one to add to the collection. Anyway, I've rabbited on for so long on this video. This was only going to be a quick review of this piece of iron, and yeah, it's become a lot longer than I anticipated, so I'm going to wrap this up there. I mean, if you've enjoyed watching and my little story here, then please do give it a thumbs up, and as always, if you can check out the channel, I've got lots of videos on there, everything, like I say, from roller coasters to steam engine, lots of model making, lots of radio control cars. It's pretty much anything that interests me, and if you can subscribe, I'd be really, really grateful. And with that, I'm going to wrap this up and just say thanks ever so much for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.